My name is Will Kell. I'm a crop advisor and precision ag specialist with Holmes Agro. I wanted to give a bit of a presentation today on some of the technologies that we're using on today's farms and to kind of answer the question, are we really making precision pay? And kind of answer the question of what does precision ag mean to you or to your operation specifically? A while back, the National Research Council put this definition together for what precision ag means, and it gets kind of long and uses big words, and it's the kind of thing you'd expect a research council to put out, but what does it actually look like on your farm? So typically when we're talking precision ag technology, we're looking at things like GPS guidance or auto steer, yield monitor systems. We're looking at satellite imagery or drone imagery for that matter, soil mapping, whether you're using things like grid or site-specific sampling, or whether you're using a system like Soil Optics or Veris. We're looking at variable rate applications of fertilizer, chemical, lime, you name it. We can pretty much variable rate anything we want to these days. We're looking at data management systems, so things like FCC's Ag Expert Platform, Granular Business, or even Holmes Agro's My Farm system could kind of fit into that category. The next few minutes, I'd like to rein it back in here and look at a few different things regarding variable rate seeding and some variable rate fertilizer. Last winter, the Holmes team kind of got together and we realized that we didn't have a lot of validation behind some of the different strategies here and what we were doing. So we kind of designed this trial idea where we were looking at, conventional seeding versus your VR seeding, and then one pass, two pass fertilizer, just to see what was going to combine to give us kind of the best yield bump, or what was going to combine to give us the most profit per acre. So we partnered up with 3 progressive growers from the Orangeville and Stayner areas here, and we ended up with about 360 acres worth of trials. So on the next few slides, I'll run through kind of how we set up and design these trials. But I'm just going to use one farm as an example for the sake of time. If you'd like to see the whole information package, you can contact me or afterwards, or your Holmes Agro crop advisor should have the information booklet, and you can go through that at a later date. So as we kind of get into this, I should mention that all of the farms that we used in the trial this year were grid sampled. That gave us kind of an idea of what we were going to be working with, and gave us a good base for the scripts. We also kind of changed the total fertilizer used to line up as best we could with the growers' existing systems and yield goals and geographies that they were working in. So none of the trials are exactly identical, but they do all use kind of the same ratios, and I think they give us a good cross section of some different situations that we could be working in. So we built these scripts based on P and K levels from the soil grid samples. So here's our script for the one pass program using ESN and urea for nitrogen sources. And then this is the first pass of our split application program using just urea. So if you look at those two maps and kind of picture them laid over top of each other, you can see the zones kind of starting to appear here, where we were flat rating, where we were variable rating. And then after that, of course, we moved on to some of our variable rate seeding. Again, this was changed based on what the growers' normal rates were, what varieties they were growing, and what their yield goal at the end of the day was. We based these scripts on the CEC and the organic matter of the soil based on those grid samples. The idea being that areas that were identified to have a little bit better water holding and nutrient holding capacity, we would expect are going to yield a little higher. So we pushed the seeding rates up in those areas and then cut back in some areas where we didn't think we were going to be able to get the yield out to justify it. On to some of our in-season applications. So we did have granular imagery on all of these farms. So in this case, you're looking at the image from June 26th, which we were able to turn into a top dress that looked a bit like this on June 26th as well. Normally, we aren't able to do it quite that quick, but I would say 3 to 5 days is probably average from the time the image downloads from the satellites to the time we can turn it into a script and get out to the field. In this case, we were using Amidas as the product of choice. So at that 150-pound kind of standard rate, that gives us about 60 pounds of extra nitrogen. And then in our variable rate section on the bottom, you can see if you compare against the image, there's a few areas that looked a little bit lighter colored or worse crops, so we cut back a bit, and then some of the darker areas, they were looking pretty good, so we put a little bit extra nitrogen on in those cases. Finally, we combined these farms. We took them to yield. We were able to collect yield data off of all of the farms, either through My John Deere or through Climate Field View, and we were able to take that data and work with it and kind of crunch it by zone. It's kind of interesting if you look at this yield map, you can start to see some of those zones actually stand out right in the yield, which was certainly interesting and a good sign for our research, at least. At the end of the day, what did we actually learn? So I took the average of all of our trials together and put them into this little chart here. So we can see kind of our yield per zone or per treatment, as well as our moisture. We can see our net revenue based on, in this case, I used $5 corn. I'm sure a lot of you this year did a little better than that, but it's a nice round number to work with. And then we can see, our seed costs, our fertilizer costs, and then application and VR. And then at the end there, I have a bit of a net revenue in brackets, just because, we still have to pay rent and we still have to buy equipment, and there's lots of other costs that go into growing a crop, as we all know. But this gives us kind of an idea of how these stacked up, just comparing what we were changing. And one of the interesting things I thought, at least on this slide, is if we look at those seed costs, as much as variable rate seeding is promoted as a big cost saving measure, for as much as we changed populations up and down in this case, we were really only up $2 or down $2 an acre off of average, which certainly surprised me. What are some of the key takeaways from this trial? I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is that split application of nitrogen on corn is really paying. In this trial, we averaged about $15 an acre a head, including accounting for those extra application costs. But we have seen a bigger gap than that in some other trials, especially on the Orangeville Research Farm. We've got 2-year data now showing that split application is getting us an extra 15 to 20 bushels an acre over a single pass fertilizer. The other thing that split application allows you to do is to manage the crop that Mother Nature is going to give you. We know some years you come into June and your crop looks awesome, prices look like they're going to go up, and we want to just put the hammer down and put some extra nitrogen on and try and optimize our yield potential there. And some years it's the complete opposite situation, right? Where maybe your crop didn't emerge great, maybe we're coming into a drought situation, and you don't really want to put that much extra fertilizer on because you're not entirely sure you're going to get your money back. And then obviously now we have variable rate capabilities, so we can make that decision kind of on a part of a field basis instead of a full field or a full farm, where now we can say, yeah, that corner of the farm looks great, let's put some more on there, or that part of the farm, it drowned out a bit, we're not going to worry about it, we'll just cut the rate back there. And then one of the other things that I think we learned here is that on the more variable the farm, the bigger response to variable management. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. I think that's kind of a common sense conclusion, but at least now we have kind of the data or the number set to back that. I think with this trial, because we used farms that were grid sampled, we kind of knew how much variability existed going in. So we would have one farm that I would suggest was quite variable, and one that was kind of in the middle, and then another farm that was quite consistent. And on the farms that were more variable, we definitely saw bigger swings in yield and bigger swings in profit per acre at the end of the day. And lastly, I think we have to remember to kind of keep it simple and remember that our base fertility is going to come first. We can do all of the variable rate seeding or all of the variable rate nitrogen you want to do, but if you've got a pH issue or you don't have enough potash to grow a crop, really all we're doing is drawing pretty maps. And we can certainly use the variable rate technology in addressing those base fertility issues, but they have to be addressed before we start doing some of these other things. Lastly, I had a few other thoughts kind of related to this topic as I was putting this presentation together. The first being, as we move towards an environment that's becoming more and more restricting in how we can use fertilizer, whether that's Fertilizer Canada's 4R program or whether it's government regulation on things like phosphorus or potentially nitrogen, um, we have to understand these strategies and know how we can use them to get the best bang for your buck out of all the inputs that you are able to put down. If we're going to get into a situation where you can only use so much fertilizer, we need to make sure it's going where it needs to be. And then looking at some of the carbon credit programs that are starting to come out, there seems to be a huge emphasis on data management. And I'm certainly not an expert on carbon farming or on how these programs are going to work, but I think that a lot of farms in Ontario are certainly doing a lot of things right. The key is going to be being able to prove that you're following the rules. So whether that's using, the as applied maps from your fertilizer you put on, or your yield maps, and being able to store those and access those to prove, how much nutrients went on to certain areas and how much nutrients came off of certain areas, I think is going to be important going forward. And then the other part of that is that, these credit and payout programs are really going to change how the numbers work. If you start looking at, your $1 or $2 an acre for imagery and a variable rate nitrogen application, if that's going to qualify you to get into one of these programs to get some of these payouts, it's really going to take all the numbers that I had, a few slides ago there and throw them completely out the window and change the game up a little. So I think these are certainly ideas that we need to be paying attention to going forward, and certainly understand the systems and understand how to manage them. So that's everything that I had. I'd like to thank everybody for watching, and hopefully you learned something. My contact information is there if you'd like to ask a few more questions about these trials or talk precision ag in general. I'd certainly be more than willing to have that conversation. It's worth noting at this point, we are planning on running these trials again in 2021. So if you watch this and if this was something that was interesting to you, or you think it could be a fit for you, please give me a call and we'll find a way to get you involved. I'd also like to thank Daryl Burnett, Brian Dunlop, and Will Vanlerhoven. Those were the cooperators we worked with this year. They were certainly awesome to work with in setting the trials up and sticking to our parameters and doing a good job to get everything as close as they could to make it work out for us. So huge thanks to those guys for their help.
Thanks, Will. That was a very informative presentation on some of the precision ag work that we did in 2020, and looking forward to what we can do in 2021. To round out our precision ag talk, we have Dana Schofield, that's the digital business manager for Corteva AgriScience. And then, so any questions that we have for Dana and Will, we will address them after Dana's presentation. So take it away, Dana.
Hi all. First off, I want to take a moment and just thank you all very much for taking the time out of your day to be with us. We really do appreciate it. My name is Dana Schofield. I'm the digital business manager with Corteva AgriScience. I've been working very closely with Holmes Agro, building this My Farm offering to help homes and their customers essentially collaborate in one central place. Not only that, but the system has another layer to it this year, where in the past it was built more on agronomic layers, but we've been able to incorporate some financial layers as well. And I'm just really looking forward to working with Holmes, and more importantly, Holmes' customers here in 2021. Okay, so what's new with Holmes My Farm offering in 2021? Well, I alluded to it earlier. The ability to really drive profitability with data that you or Holmes Agro already has. Being able to take layers like imagery or your planting maps or yield data and be able to tie revenue and cost to those, letting you see what's working and what's holding you back, so you can make decisions today that impact yield and profitability for tomorrow. Just simple, straightforward analysis for better decision making. So, how can we get your data into the system? Well, there's two ways. Your Holmes representative can either come out and take your files manually and we can upload them from your monitor. We work with 10 different manufacturers. Or we also have a wireless data connection if you're using something like John Deere Operations Center, or if you've worked with anyone on the Corteva team and they've put your data into Corteva fields. Okay, so we're in season, you're planting. Whether you've received a variable rate seeding script from your Holmes Agro representative, or let's just say you're using your own monitor, all that data will be either uploaded manually, as I said earlier, or it will come in wirelessly. And essentially, you as a Holmes customer can log into this complimentary Granular and My Farm account to see the varieties that you've planted, where they were planted, the seeding rates, the dates that it was planted, just essentially all the great data that you can use throughout the season to answer questions that you may have. But also the other good thing about this is your home scouting staff will also have this at their fingertips too. So as they're scouting, it's going to help them analyze what's happening in the field and understand all the other contributing factors to see how the crop is progressing or what a potential issue is. So we're in late May, early June, the crops are emerging, things are coming out of the ground. This is the satellite imagery that we'll have access to. So how can we use this tool? Well, I mentioned in the past slide, your Home Scout can easily be using this against a as planted map to see how things are emerging. However, the other big thing that they can do is your Scout can now add a geo-referenced pin and add notes and photos and the text this right to the customer on what they're seeing in the field. You can also provide a solution. You as a customer can also take notes and photos and collaborate back with the Holmes team. And another big thing that we can do is take the satellite imagery and layer a yield map from previous years as ways just to see how things are coming along. One of the other things that we will do is sign you up to receive weekly scouting emails. Obviously, this isn't ever going to replace boots on the ground. However, it could really help you prioritize what fields those boots need to go to first. And in addition to that, Holmes can also use these images to create scripts and fertility recommendations based on a combination of this imagery and soil samples and yield maps that they already have in their My Farm system. So harvest. A lot of us have seen these yield maps. And now you can easily share these maps and collaborate with your Holmes representatives and take it to the next level. We take this more in depth, and this is where we start looking at profitability. We can take the cost of your seed, your N, P, K, fungicide, land costs, and general overhead cost line items and create profit maps. And we bring it all together. So once the data is all loaded, what does this mean to you as a Holmes Agro customer? Well, this is where My Farm gets really exciting, because we can take this data and power more profitable decisions. You can compare map layers side by side. And where this really shines is not just looking at the agronomic map layers that you're accustomed to seeing, such as a yield map, but this has all financials with your revenue, with costs, and you can visually dig down and diagnose what's impacting your bottom line. So for example, we can come out, connect your planting data. The Home Scouts throughout the growing season can take notes and add those to the field. And when harvest rolls around, we can connect the yield data, and My Farm and Granular Insights automatically calculates profit, revenue, and costs based on regional averages from grain farmers of Ontario. This is going to allow you as a grower to compare seeding rates, planting dates, hybrids, along with, other notes to understand why the crop progressed the way it did and how that impacted not just yield, but profit. In addition to the visual map layers, this tool also provides a very easy way to get to a straightforward ranking of your fields. So you know which fields are performing and which are holding you back. And you can sort the fields based on profit, revenue, cost, seed, harvest, moisture, seeding rate. And I just want to emphasize how different this is from what a lot of growers are doing today. Instead of spending hours reconciling spreadsheets and multiple data sources, all a grower needs to do is connect your data with Holmes, and that's all. My Farm Granular Insights is going to do the rest by automatically combining your planting data, the yield data, with all your other estimated revenue and costs, and put it into an easy to understand format. One of the most differentiated parts of the system is the ability to easily answer key questions with simple charts. Now, you'll notice that this tool combines both agronomic and financial information to show the bottom line impact of in-field decisions. But for example, what are some of these questions you could be asking? So, what's the best date to start planting based on the impact to my revenue? Or what's the right harvest moisture that I should be targeting to get the most out of my yield? Right? We'll be able to see this and have years of data in these simple to read charts. Or one of the new tools that that's coming out is the ability to look at how varieties performed better than others with our new variety comparison tool. So not only your yield and planting data, using your planting and yield data, the variety comparison insights is going to allow you to target the trends driving corn and soybean variety performance. So run head-to-head comparisons to see why each variety had a greater yield or a profit. And then being able to isolate variety performance by field placement with the notes and photos that your Holmes Agro representative takes throughout the season, will be able to understand soil types, seeding rates, planting dates, and really essentially pinpoint what affected yield. So from a value proposition standpoint, for a farm with machine data, what are you going to get out of this, right? So just being able to put dollars to every acre and the potential of each acre. It's going to help you with rental agreements. It's going to just show you a plain black and white view of what the land is really worth. And it really quantifies what your good land is and what you can work on. Better understanding of competitive products that you use in your operation. And then, with that insights tab, being able to have a report card on how the operation is running, what went right, what went wrong, profitability takes us to the next level, and show how well you're doing farm by farm. And again, really easy place to collaborate with your Holmes Agro team. Now, we all don't have machine data, I get that. And I'd like to turn it back over to Will and myself for questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Dana. That is a very useful tool that we can attach not only yield now, but revenues and costs, and get pretty cool profit mapping. So there was a question come in, and I guess I'll direct this one to Will. But can Holmes Agro's application equipment upload their as applied maps to my farm?
I guess the simple answer to that would be probably not in the way that you're thinking. Our My Farm system has kind of an internal side and an external side, and we haven't quite got the technology there yet to put those maps into the external customer-facing side where you could log on to your My Farm account and see them. That being said, we do keep all of those as applied maps and stuff in our own files. If customers want to see a hard copy or an electronic copy of them, we can send that out. But we haven't quite got it seamlessly that you can just log on to the system and see them all yourself just yet. That answers the question.
Perfect. And then I just have one here for Dana. What are the top three things operations are doing as a management decision once they have this profit mapping capability with Granular?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think number one is what I've seen a lot across Ontario is more environmental issues, right? Maybe tillage or drainage, sorry. So that would be one. Another one would be working more closely on fertility, soil sampling specific areas, and just really building the fertility there would be number two, which I see a lot. And then number three, maybe different marketing decisions, just being able to look at more of the profitability.
Right. Cool. I think that was all the questions that we found here in the chat. So I'd like to thank Dana and Will for covering the precision ag topic of the session here today. Thank you very much, guys.